to Deep Sleep Stories. If these stories have helped you through restless nights, please leave a review. Reviews are what help this podcast grow, reach more listeners, and stay alive. Without them, even something meaningful can slowly disappear. So if this show has brought you comfort, that small act truly helps keep it going. Now, settle in, and let's begin.
Welcome to Deep Sleep Stories, a quiet place where your thoughts can soften and your body can rest. And tonight you'll drift into a dreamy journey to a hidden tea house where mist wanders like a gentle guest. You are here now exactly where you need to be. Let your shoulders loosen. Let your jaw unclench. Let your hands fall open as if they're setting down something heavy. Notice the way the air feels as it moves in and the way it moves out. A slow breath in as if you're smelling warm tea leaves. A slow breath out as if you're fogging a window with a sigh. With every exhale, allow the day to blur at the edges, the bright corners, the sharp sounds, the small responsibilities tapping at your mind. Imagine a hush spreading through you like a soft blanket unfolding. Your forehead smooths. Your eyelids grow pleasantly heavy. Your thoughts can come and go without being followed. Now picture a path at twilight where light is gentle and nothing is urgent. There is a faint scent of rain on stone. There is a whisper of pine in the air. Somewhere nearby, water moves over pebbles with a sound like quiet laughter. And as you breathe, you begin to sense it far ahead, partially hidden by drifting silver fog. An old tea house resting in the folds of the world. A place where time slows, where steam rises in calm spirals, where the mist itself seems to listen. Stay with that feeling. Inhale softly. Exhale slowly. And when you're ready, let the story begin to carry you in the foothills of a mountain range that many people only saw from a distance. There was a valley that held its own weather. Cloud banks often gathered there, not with storms and thunder, but with a patient, pearly quiet. Mornings arrived wrapped in pale gray. Afternoons shimmered with light that looked filtered through silk, and evenings especially were known for mist that drifted in slow ribbons curling around tree trunks and stone lanterns as if the world were being tucked in for the night. It was in that valley, along a path of mossy steps and worn slate, that the Teahouse of Drifting Mist waited. From far away it didn't announce itself. It did not rise sharply into view, nor did it glitter or call for attention. It simply belonged to the landscape the way a bird's nest belongs to a branch. Its roof was gently bowed, dark with age and rain, and its wooden walls carried the soft silvering that comes from years of fog and sun. Paper lanterns hung beneath the eaves, their glow warm and steady like small moons that had decided to live close to the earth. The tea house stood at the edge of a pond where lilies floated lazily and koi moved in unhurried loops. A narrow bridge crossed the pond, and the bridge's railing was smooth from countless hands. Hands that had rested there, pausing to watch the water, pausing to feel the peace seep in. On a certain evening when the sky was the color of brushed ink and the first stars were waking behind thin clouds, a traveler came along the path, on the stone. His breath made no visible on the stone. His breath made no visible cloud, even though the air was cool. He wore a cloak that had the soft look of something well-loved, and he carried a small bundle tied with a faded ribbon. He did not know the valley's secrets in the way that locals did, and yet he wasn't surprised by the mist. It felt familiar to him, as if he had once dreamed of a place like this and had simply been waiting to remember. As he approached the pond, the fog thickened, drifting across the water in pale layers. It did not obscure the lantern light. Instead, it made the light gentler, diffusing it into a glow that seemed to float. The traveler paused at the bridge and rested his hand on the smooth railing. He watched the koi beneath the surface. Orange and white shapes slid through the shadowed water like slow-moving embers. A lily pad trembled slightly as one fish brushed past. A breeze stirred, very mild, and the mist shifted, parting for a moment like a curtain. Through that opening, the traveler saw the tea house door, a sliding door of wood and paper, closed but welcoming. There was no sign, no carved name, yet the traveler felt sure deep down that this was the place he'd been looking for without realizing it. He stepped from the bridge onto the stone walkway, and the moment his foot touched the next slab, a chime sounded. It was not sharp. It was not loud. It was the kind of sound that seemed to happen inside the air rather than through it, like a bell heard from very far away. The door slid open as if it had been expecting him. Inside, warmth breathed out. Not heat exactly, but a living, steady comfort. The room smelled of toasted rice, tea, and cedar. The floor was covered in woven mats, and low tables waited with quiet patience. In the center, a brazier glowed faintly, its coals a soft heart of red. Behind the main counter stood the keeper of the tea house, wore a simple robe. The color of dried leaves, and her hair was pinned up with a slender branch of some pale wood, as if the forest had offered it. Her eyes were calm, deep, reflective, like a pond at dusk. She bowed to the traveler, and the traveler bowed in return, as if they were continuing a conversation begun long ago. "No rush," she said softly, and even her voice seemed to slow the air. "The kettle is always near to singing." The traveler stepped in and set his bundle down by the entrance, as though placing worries outside. The door slid closed behind him with a whisper. The tea house felt like a pocket of stillness stitched into the evening. He chose a table by the window. From there he could see the pond, though the view was softened by paper screens and drifting fog beyond. Lantern light reflected in the water in broken lines like golden thread. The tea maker moved with unhurried grace. She rinsed a clay teapot with hot water, warming it. She measured leaves, dark, curled, fragrant, and placed them inside. She poured, waited, breathed. Everything she did was quiet, precise, and kind. While she worked, the traveler listened to the sounds of the tea house. The faint crackle of coals, the gentle tick of a bamboo ladle touching the rim of a water basin. Somewhere behind a screen, wind brushed the eaves. Each sound was separate and clear, as if the world had decided to speak in whispers only. The tea maker brought the traveler a cup on a small tray. The cup was simple, glazed in a color like mist at dawn. A thin ribbon of steam rose from the surface, curling into the air, as if it were writing a language of calm. "This is cloud leaf," she said. "It grows where the mountains breathe on the trees." The traveler wrapped his hands around the cup. The warmth sank into his palms. He inhaled, and the scent was both earthy and bright, like wet stone and fresh grass. He sipped. The tea was gentle at first, then it bloomed slowly, spreading comfort through his chest and throat. It tasted like quiet, like rain falling into deep water. It tasted like letting go. The tea maker watched him with the kind of patience that didn't expect anything. She simply existed in the same room, offering presence the way the lanterns offered light. After the traveler drank, the silence felt even softer, as if it were becoming a cushion around him. He set the cup down and looked out at the pond. The mist outside was drifting, always drifting. It moved in slow currents, and within it, faint shapes seemed to appear and dissolve. Suggestions of branches, hints of stones, shadows that might have been birds or might have been imagination. In that valley, people sometimes said the mist carried memories. Not heavy, painful memories, but the kind that were ready to be set down, the kind that had been held too tightly, the kind that wanted to become gentle again. The traveler breathed out long and slow and felt something inside him loosen, as if a knot had decided it no longer needed to be a knot. The tea maker returned to the counter and began preparing another pot. This one she steeped in a glass vessel so the leaves could be seen as they unfurled. She did it as though she were allowing them to wake. As the leaves floated and slowly opened, the traveler noticed something subtle. The steam rising from the teapot did not vanish into the air. It lingered. It drifted in delicate swirls toward the room's corners, and then toward the traveler, and then toward the window. It moved like mist outside, but it was warmer, softer, scented with tea. The traveler watched, and his eyes grew heavier, not with sleep yet, but with a deepening relaxation. The tea house seemed to invite that feeling, to make it safe. A small sound came from near the entrance, a gentle shuffle like slippers on matting. Another guest had arrived. The door slid open with the same whisper, and cool, fog-laced air slipped in. This guest was an older person wrapped in a shawl the color of moonlight. They moved slowly, as if savoring each step. They bowed to the tea maker, and she bowed in return. No hurried words were exchanged, only a quiet understanding the way a river understands its banks. The older guest took a seat at a table further back, near a shelf of clay jars. Each jar had a small paper label tied around it, though the writing was so faint it seemed meant for the tea maker alone. The traveler watched the new guest settle in, then returned his gaze to the pond outside. The mist thickened and thinned in gentle cycles, like breathing. It felt as if the entire valley were inhaling and exhaling. The tea maker approached the older guest first, offering a cup with both hands. Then she returned to the traveler with the glass pot and poured another cup. "This one is called Lantern Bloom," she said. "It's for evenings when the mind is too bright." The traveler smiled faintly. He understood without needing explanation. Some days the mind shone too intensely, thoughts sparking and fluttering like moths around a flame. And what it needed sometimes was not more effort, but a gentler light. He sipped the Lantern Bloom tea. It tasted soft and floral, with a quiet sweetness that did not demand attention. It seemed to settle his thoughts, encouraging them to float rather than dart. As he drank, the traveler noticed the shelf of jars behind the older guest. One jar in particular seemed slightly different. It was a matte gray, shaped like a small hill. The label on it was blank, no writing at all, only a faint imprint like a leaf pressed into paper. The traveler's gaze lingered, and the tea maker noticed. "That jar," she said softly, "holds a tea that is not for every night. It is for nights when someone is ready to drift." "Drift where?" the traveler asked, though his voice was quiet, as if he didn't want to disturb the air. The tea maker's eyes held lantern light. "Not far," she said. "Not away, just deeper." The traveler looked down into his cup. Steam rose, and for a moment the swirling shapes seemed to form a path. Just a suggestion, a curving line that disappeared. He didn't feel afraid. If anything, he felt curious in the calmest way, as if curiosity itself had softened. "I think," he said after a moment, "that I have been holding my days too tightly." The tea maker nodded, as if this was a familiar truth. Many people came to the tea house with that feeling. Some arrived carrying a weight they didn't know how to name. Some arrived with a mind that would not rest. Some arrived simply because the mist had called them. "No hurry," she reminded him again. "The valley has time." The traveler sat quietly, and the tea house held him. Minutes passed like falling feathers. Outside, the pond rippled. A koi surfaced briefly, making a small circle in the water before disappearing again. The lantern reflections wavered, then steadied. Inside, the older guest was sipping in slow rhythm, eyes half closed. Their shoulders were relaxed, as if they had already begun to drift somewhere gentle. The tea maker returned to her counter and opened one of the jars. The scent that rose was deep and soothing, like warm earth after rain, like cedar after sun. She placed a pinch of leaves into a small pot then added something else. A single dried petal, pale as moonlight. The traveler watched, and he felt the tea house change slightly, as if it were leaning closer, listening more closely, not in a way that demanded attention, but in a way that offered support. The tea maker poured water, and the kettle's soft sigh filled the room. Steam rose, curling around her hands. She waited, and in that waiting there was a lesson. Nothing needed to be rushed. Everything could unfold at its own pace. When she carried the cup to the traveler, she moved even more slowly than before. "This is drifting mist tea," she said. "It is not meant to solve anything. It is meant to soften the edges of what you carry." The traveler accepted the cup with both hands. The cup felt heavier than the others, as if it held not just tea but stillness. The glaze was a smoky gray with pale swirls like fog captured in clay. He raised it to his lips. The tea was warm and gentle, and it carried a taste that was hard to describe. It was not bitter, it was not sweet. It was something in between, something like the flavor of calm itself. It reminded him of walking through morning fog when the world was quiet and soft and forgiving. As he drank, the traveler felt his thoughts slow like leaves settling in water. The room seemed to become even quieter, though it was not empty. It was full of presence, the tea maker's steady attention, the older guest's peaceful breathing, the pond's quiet movement, the mist's patient drift. And then something strange and beautiful happened. The mist outside the window began to drift inward, not as cold air, not as something intrusive, but as a gentle presence that slipped through the paper screens like light. It entered the tea house in thin ribbons curling near the floor first, then rising slightly, moving as if it knew exactly where it wanted to be. The traveler watched without alarm. The mist carried the scent of wet stone and pine. It was familiar, comforting. The tea maker did not seem surprised. "The mist comes in sometimes," she said. "It likes the warmth, and it likes stories." "Stories?" the traveler murmured, his eyelids growing heavier. The tea maker nodded, and her smile was small, like a secret, kept kindly. "This tea house is old," she said. "It has heard many things. The mist carries them, and sometimes it shares them, not with words, but with feeling." The mist curled closer to the traveler's table, and the steam from his cup mingled with it. Warm fog and cool fog blended together until there was no clear boundary, only softness. The traveler's breathing became slow and deep, the kind of breath that comes when the body knows it is safe. In the mist, shapes began to form, not sharp images, but gentle impressions like memories seen through water. The traveler saw faintly a mountain path lined with wildflowers. He saw hands planting rice seedlings in flooded fields, the water reflecting sky. He saw a child running through tall grass, laughter rising like birds. He saw an old woman sitting by a window, sewing quietly while rain tapped the roof. These were not his memories. Or perhaps they were. in the way that all quiet moments belong to everyone. The mist did not insist on meaning. It simply offered peaceful scenes, like a kindly host offering blankets. The traveler's mind tried to follow at first, to understand, to label. But the tea and the tea house were gentle teachers. They reminded him that he didn't need to grasp. He could simply watch and let the images drift by like clouds. The older guest breathed out a long, soft sigh. The mist near their table shimmered faintly and then settled. The tea maker moved to the brazier and adjusted the coals. A small spark rose and vanished. The warmth remained steady. The traveler's cup grew lighter in his hands as he drank the last sip. He set it down slowly, as if placing something precious. His fingers rested on the rim, feeling the smooth clay. The warmth, the mist continued to flow gently through the room. It curled around table legs, along the edges of the mats, then rose in soft spirals toward the ceiling beams. It moved like a slow dance, a dance with no audience, no performance, only presence. The tea maker spoke again, her voice as soft as paper. "Some people come here to rest," she said. "Some come to remember what rest feels like, and some come because they are ready to drift into the kind of quiet that heals." The traveler didn't answer with words. He simply breathed. His chest rose and fell in slow rhythm. His shoulders sank further. His hands rested, no longer gripping. Outside, night deepened. The sky turned darker, and the lantern's glow became more pronounced. The pond looked like a piece of night itself, interrupted only by faint ripples. The traveler felt as though he were floating, though he was sitting still. The tea house did not move, and yet it seemed to drift through the mist, through time, through some gentle current that carried away sharpness. The tea maker poured another cup, not for him this time, but for the room itself. She set it on a small table near the window, as if offering tea to the mist. The mist curled around the cup, and for a moment it seemed to brighten, as if grateful. The traveler's thoughts became fewer. When a thought appeared, it drifted by like a leaf on water. There was no need to chase it, no need to keep it. It could simply pass. He felt somewhere deep inside a quiet realization. He did not have to hold everything. He did not have to carry every moment like a heavy bundle. He could set some things down. He could let them dissolve into mist. The older guest stood slowly, bowing to the tea maker. The tea maker bowed back. No words were spoken because none were needed. The door slid open and the older guest stepped out into the night. The mist welcomed them, wrapping around their shawl like a friendly scarf. The door slid closed again, and the tea house returned to its warm hush. Now the traveler and the tea maker were the only ones inside. The tea maker moved quietly, cleaning cups, rinsing the pot, wiping the counter with slow, mindful strokes. Each motion was like a lullaby for the eyes. The traveler watched, feeling his eyelids droop further. The mist inside the tea house thickened slightly, but it did not cloud. It softened, It blurred edges. It made everything look like a dream that didn't need to be remembered. The tea maker noticed the traveler's posture, the way his head tilted slightly, the way his hands rested loosely. "It's all right," she said softly. "You can drift." The traveler's breath deepened. His chest rose and fell like a calm tide. The tea house seemed to respond. The lantern light softened further, as if dimming without changing. The crackle of the coals became even quieter. The world narrowed gently to warmth, mist, and slow breathing. Outside, the pond was still. The koi moved in the dark water, unseen but present, like thoughts that no longer needed to surface. The traveler's mind began to wander into gentler places. He imagined the mountains beyond the valley, sleeping under their blankets of cloud. He imagined forests breathing slowly, leaves rustling in drowsy rhythm. He imagined the mist itself as a living thing, not mysterious in a frightening way, but mysterious in the way of a closed book that can be opened whenever one is ready. The tea maker placed a small cushion near the traveler's table, then another. She did not touch him. She did not instruct. She simply made the space more comfortable, the way someone might quietly straighten a blanket for a sleeping child. The traveler's head leaned slightly to one side. He didn't resist. He didn't correct his posture. He let himself be held by gravity, by warmth, by the tea house's steady peace. In the mist near the window, another impression formed. A small boat drifting on a lake at dawn. No oars, no destination, just drifting. The lake was calm, the sky pale, the world quiet. The boat moved slowly, carried by a gentle current. The traveler's breathing matched that motion. In and out, slow and steady, like water lapping softly against wood. The tea in his belly was warmth, spreading through him like a slow sunrise. His limbs felt heavier, in a pleasant way. His hands were relaxed. His feet, if he thought of them at all, felt distant and comfortable. The tea maker's movements became slower too, as if she were sinking with the traveler's drowsiness. She sat behind the counter for a while, hands folded, watching the mist drift. Her eyes were open, calm, as if she were keeping quiet watch over the valley's dreamers. Minutes passed, or perhaps longer. In the tea house, time was not strict. It was soft. It was something that could stretch and blur like mist itself. The traveler was no longer thinking in sentences. He was thinking in feelings, warmth, quiet, safety. The lantern's glow became like a distant hearth seen through sleepy eyes. The sounds became like a lullaby heard from another room. The mist became like a blanket that didn't weigh anything, and somewhere deep in that quiet, the traveler's worries, whatever they had been, began to dissolve. Not dramatically, not as if being erased, but as if being softened until they could no longer prick. The tea house stayed still. The pond stayed still. The mist drifted, slow and kind. The traveler's breath was deep now. In gentle, out, gentle. The tea maker lowered the lantern slightly, not with a switch, but with a subtle adjustment, as if the light itself understood that it was time to rest. The room grew even quieter, even softer. Outside, the valley slept beneath its pale veil. Inside, warmth held steady. The traveler's eyes were fully closed now, his face relaxed, his hands quiet in his lap. Thoughts were far away like lights on a distant hillside. The mist curled near him and then drifted on. Nothing to do, nothing to solve, only drifting. In the hush, the tea house seemed to whisper a promise without words. You are safe and you can let go. And so the traveler drifted deeper, down into stillness, down into quiet, down into sleep. Good night, dear traveler. Sleep well.